Like, do you agree that cell is the basic unit of life? If yes, then explain. Then you can say that yes, cell is indeed the structural and functional unit of life, meaning it is very basic and it is most important. Now, on the basis of number of cells, the organism can be of two types. The first is unicellular, the second is multicellular. Now, uni means one and cellular means the thing that is made up of cell. So, when an organism is made up of just one cell, then that organism is known as unicellular. The example is bacteria. Then multicellular, when the organism is made up of more than one cells, right? Many cells, such as man, dog, cow, and all the organisms that are higher organisms. So organisms can be of two types depending upon the number of cells in their body. Is it clear up till now?
Mm.
All
Yes,
right.
no.
Now moving forward, let us talk about who discovered the living cell. So Anton von Leeuwenhoek, he was a scientist in the year 1674. He discovered the living cell, meaning the cell that was living. Now, we must know that the shape and the size of the cell, it varies according to the function that it performs. Okay, like all the shape, like the size and shape of all the cells are not same. They would vary. All the cells and like the shape and sizes of them are different. Why? Because not every cell performs the same function. So because of that, the size and the shape varies from cell to cell. Now, if we are talking so much about the cell, then we must talk about the cell theory. There was a theory which was given by two biologists, and their names were Clyden and Swan. So they gave 2 points. They said that all the plants and animals were made up of cells. Okay, they said that okay, it's not just the animals, not just the plants, but both of them, they are made up of cells only. And cell is the basic unit of life, meaning without cell, life is not possible. Then came another scientist whose name was Rudolf Virchow in the year 1855. He told us about the origin of cell, like where do they come from. So according to Rudolf Virchow, all the cells come from pre-existing cells, meaning the cells that have already been existing, new cells will arise from them only. So these 3 points, all the plants and animals are made up of cells. Cell is the basic unit of life. All cells come from pre-existing cells. These 3 points, they come under the cell theory. So this is altogether the cell theory. Now, always remember that if the question comes like who proposed the cell theory, then you write Clyden and Swan. Okay. Now, talking about the human body, we know that there are so many tissues in the body, right? So many different cells also. So the heart, it is responsible for the pumping of blood. The eyes is responsible for the sight. The stomach is responsible for the storage of food, right? And also it digests the food. So with this, we come to the topic that is what are the various components of the cell? We have to see that. So the cell in general has three components. First is plasma membrane, then there is the nucleus, and then there is the cytoplasm or the protoplasm. Okay, these three are the components of the cell. Plasma membrane, which is sort of like the outer membrane that protects the cell. The nucleus, it is the sort of like, you can imagine nucleus as the brain of the cell. Then there is cytoplasm or protoplasm. It is the fluid-like structure in which all the organelles are there, all the, like the nucleus is also there in the cytoplasm only. And the cytoplasm is the arena, the area where all the cellular activities occur. Okay. Now, there are two types of organisms depending upon the way the cell structures are there. Prokaryotes and eukaryotes. See, prokaryotic organisms are those organisms that do not contain a membrane bound nucleus. meaning that their nucleus is not surrounded by this membrane. So these organisms are known as prokaryotic organism or prokaryotes. Now talking about the eukaryotic organism. See, eukaryotic organisms, they contain a proper membrane surrounding the nucleus. Okay, and this membrane is responsible for, forming like an outer structure to the nucleus. So this one is present in the eukaryotes. So this is a major difference in between prokaryotes and the eukaryotes. The prokaryotes will not have a membrane surrounding the nucleus, whereas the eukaryotes will definitely have a membrane that surrounds the nucleus. Is it clear up till now?
Mm. Yes, mom.
All right. Now moving forward, let us talk about each of the components of the cell. So plasma membrane is there. Okay, we already discussed this is the outermost layer. Then nucleus, it is sort of like the brain of the cell, the control house of the cell. It controls all the activities that the cell performs. Then there is the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm contains all the organelles. Organelles, they are little organs, like they are the structures that are present inside the cell, such as mitochondria, centriole, endoplasmic reticulum. All these are the components of the cell and they are known as the organelles. So another thing to remember here is that these prokaryotes, they do not have a membrane bound nucleus, nor do they have membrane bound cell organelles. But the eukaryotes, along with the membrane bound nucleus, they also have membrane bound cell organelles. Now, these are the three possible questions that can come. Like, who discovered the first living cell? Anton von Leeuwenhoek. Then, what are, just one second. Yes. So, yeah, I was telling you about the possible questions that can come from this particular chapter. So, the first question can come like, who discovered the first living cell? So, you'd say, what will be the answer? Tell me. The first living cell.
Robert Hooke. Anton.
No, no, Robert Hooke discovered the first cell, but the first living cell was discovered by
Antonio Leeuwenhoek.
correct Anton von Leeuwenhoek. Now, the three basic components of the cell, plasma membrane is there, then cytoplasm is there, and nucleus is there. right? And different types of cells present in the human body. There can be like mitochondria is there, right? All sorts of cells are there in the human body. Now let's talk about plasma membrane, the component, like the first component of the cell, that is plasma membrane. So always remember that it is a protective covering which is present around the cell, and it protects the cell against the external environment. Okay, it is sort of like a protective covering. See, I've drawn here. The PM stands for the plasma membrane. Now, what does it do? What is the function? Now, it allows the influx and efflux. Influx means the inflow, the incoming of anything, and also the outflow, the outgoing of anything, the materials, the substances. Now, this plasma membrane is also known as selectively permeable membrane. Why? Because it allows influx and efflux. Okay. Always remember, whenever you write about plasma membrane, you do mention that it is selectively permeable. It will not allow everything to move across, but for some substances, it is selectively permeable. Okay. Also, how is all of your preparation for the exam going?
Good, ma'am.
Good.
I'm currently studying for my these exams.
Currently, you're studying it. And how about biology? How's the biology preparation going for everyone?
Okay, ma'am.
Good.
Yes,
Because I
ma'am,
have
good.
very good. Because I have really high hopes from all of you. All of you are such good students. I'm like expecting full marks from all of you, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am, inshallah.
Hmm. Because I've seen your performances in the class, and all of you are like you understand the topic very nicely, you answer in the class. So let's aim for full marks in biology, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
hope and as soon as you get the full marks, you do come running to me, Mom, I've got the full marks, Mom, I've got the full marks, right? Because I'll be waiting for that day only. Always remember. I have high hopes. Okay. So moving forward, let us talk about diffusion. Okay. Now, diffusion, it is the movement of gases, of atoms, of molecules from a region of their higher concentration to the region of their lower concentration through a membrane that is semi-permeable in nature. Okay, so wherever the things are low in concentration, so the things will move from the higher one to the lower concentration. Okay. For example, yeah, see that I have drawn this particular case wherein we talk about oxygen. So if we are talking about the external environment, so the oxygen in the external environment is very much, right? It is in a higher concentration as compared to the body. So this is the reason why, because of this, the oxygen from the external environment, it will diffuse into the body. Because of this concentration gradient, it is higher in the environment, it is lower in the body. So the oxygen, which is a gas, it will move from the higher concentration to the lower concentration. Got it? And both the gases, meaning the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, they can move with the help of diffusion because they are gases, right? Now let us look at what is the role of diffusion. Now diffusion is responsible for the exchange of gases, or we can also call it as the gaseous exchange. The diffusion has a big role to play over here. Also, another thing to remember here is that water would also obey the law of diffusion. But when we are talking about the movement of water, we'll call it osmosis. Meaning here, the water will move from the region of its higher concentration to the region of its lower concentration. Now, there are certain factors that affects the osmosis process, such as the solute concentration. But before we talk about solute concentration, we must know what a solution is, what are its components. So see, any solution contains two things. It contains solute and it contains a solvent. Now, solvent is the medium. Okay, it is the dissolving medium. Talking about the solute, it is the substance that is being dissolved. Let us take the example of sugar water. Okay, so here the water would be the solvent because it is the dissolving medium, and the sugar that we put it in, right, that will be the solute. And altogether, when you mix sugar with water, it becomes a solution. Got it? Now, there are certain conditions, or they have talked about three different conditions of solution that are hypertonic, hypotonic, and isotonic. Now, see, when the solute concentration, always remember this is in terms of solute concentration. So, whenever the solute concentration is higher outside and the solute concentration is lower inside the cell, then where would the water move? See, if the solute concentration is higher, it means the water concentration is lower. So the water will move from the region of its higher concentration, that is the plant cell or animal cell, to the region of its lower concentration, that is the place where solute concentration is high. So this type is known as hypertonic solution. Now, when the solute concentration is low in the external environment and inside the plant cell or animal cell, the solute concentration is high. Then the water from the external environment will move into the plant cell or animal cell. This will be known as hypotonic solution. Now, in the first case, you will see that since the water moves out of the cell will shrink. If the water will move into the cell will swell. Okay, so they can ask you a question like, when does a cell shrinks in a which medium? So you'll say hypertonic. When does a cell swell up? So in a hypotonic. Now isotonic. Iso means same. Okay. So when the salt concentration or solute concentration in the external environment is equal to the solute concentration in the internal environment, then that is a isotonic solution, because here the movement will be equal because there is no, you can say, difference in the concentration in either of the condition, right? So that is isotonic. Now a question can come here, what is a hypotonic, hypertonic, and an isotonic solution, right? Because they can clearly ask you about these three conditions. Now let us look at some of the applications or examples. So the plants, they take in water, but they absorb the water. Also, in freshwater organism, this concentration gradient thing is there. Okay. Now, always remember that the plasma membrane, it is made up of two components. First is lipid, and then there is the protein. And these are the organic molecules. Okay. And it is the outermost layer that is protective in nature. Now, there is a term that is known as endocytosis. Now, see, it occurs usually, like the example that we study it in is amoeba. So, what happens is that when the amoeba engulfs the food particle with the help of pseudopodia, okay, this process is known as endocytosis. We can also call it as ingestion, meaning taking in of the food, procuring the food. That is endocytosis. So, up till now, is everything clear?
Yes,
Everything about plasma membrane, the concentration gradient, the hypertonic, hypotonic, all of these things are clear? Alright, now moving forward, let us talk about the cell wall. Now, always remember this one thing, that cell wall is absent in the case of animals and it is present in the case of plants. Okay, and cell wall in the plants is made up of cellulose. So it is cellulosic wall. It is the wall that covers, like it is present outside the plasma membrane. Okay, it is made up of cellulose. Always remember that. Now, what is the function? See, this cellulose would provide structural strength to the plants. Okay, since cell wall is present in the plants. Okay, and what is another? Let's see. Apart from providing it the strength, the cell wall also protects and prevents the cell from bursting. Like if hypertonic solutions are there, like from shrinking also, from bursting also, all of these things, the cell is being protected because of the cell wall. So it is sort of like a protective layer that is surrounding the plasma. Now also remember one thing, that apart from the plants, there are two more organisms that contain the cell wall: bacteria and fungi. So in total, plants, bacteria and fungi, these three organisms contain the cell wall, but the cell wall is absent in the case of human beings. Got it? So this was the second component of the cell. Now coming on to the nucleus. So as I told you, nucleus is the control house of the cell. Okay, it is a very dark stained area. Okay, now, yeah, okay, this question comes here. Why do we need to stain or color the cells to see it under the microscope? Can somebody answer this? Why do we need to stain the cells?
Because they don't have a color. So to see them, we have to stain them.
Correct. The cells that are normally there, they are invisible. You can't see them because they don't have a color. So as to increase the visibility, we stain them so that we can see them under the microscope, and we stain them with the help of certain dyes. These are the dyes that are used: iodine solution, saffron in solution, methylene blue solution. Like these dyes are used to stain the cells so that the visibility is clear. Now, talking about the nucleus, as I told you, if we are talking about the eukaryotes, so it obviously will have a membrane bound nucleus. Now, always remember that the nucleus has two layers. It is a double layer structure, and the layer of the nucleus is known as nuclear membrane, meaning nucleus is protected by a membrane that is known as nuclear membrane. Now, the nuclear membrane, they contain pores for the transfer of materials in and out of the cell. This is known as nuclear pore. Okay. Now, inside the nucleus, chromosome is there. What is a chromosome? Chromosome is a rod-shaped structure which carries the genetic information, the information for inheritance. Okay, like whatever information has to be passed on to the offspring, right? The traits, the characters, that is actually transported with the help, like it is carried by the chromosome. Okay, and you can imagine chromosome as being the physical carriers of the DNA. And DNA, what is it? It is a genetic material, right? And DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. So the information that the chromosome transfers, it transfers in the form of DNA. Okay. So DNA is the molecule that is responsible for the transfer inheritance of the characters from the parents to the offspring. And also remember one thing, that the chromosome is made up of two things: DNA along with proteins. So when DNA are present along with proteins, then a chromosome is made up. Okay. And also remember another thing, that they can ask you like, what is the functional unit of DNA? So the functional unit of DNA is called as a gene. Okay. Now, see, when the cell is not under division, when the cell is resting normally present, then the DNA is the part of a chromatin material. Okay, chromatin material is sort of like entangled form, and the DNA is part of that inside the nucleus. But as soon as the cell will start dividing, then the chromatin gets organized into chromosomes. Okay, and the components of chromosomes are two chromatids joined together with the help of a centromere. And this centromere, it has disc-like structures present that are known as the kinetochores. Okay, so one chromosome is made up of two chromatids. Now, like the cell has the cytoplasm, same way the nucleus has the nucleoplasm. Always remember that the nucleus has a double layer structure, and that is the nuclear membrane. And this nuclear membrane is absent in the case of prokaryotes and it is present in the case of eukaryotes. Okay, now we come to the different topic, that is what is the difference between a prokaryote and a eukaryotic cell. Now, these are the differences. The first thing is that the prokaryotic cell is very small. The size is very small. It ranges from 1 to 10 micrometer, whereas the eukaryotic cells are usually larger, 5 to 100 micrometers. Now, the nuclear membrane in the case of prokaryotic cell is absent, whereas in the case of eukaryotic cell, it will be present. Nuclear membrane means the membrane surrounding the nucleus. Now, in the case of prokaryotes, the genetic material is just lying there in the cell and single chromosome, like single structure, is present. But more than one chromosomes are present in the eukaryotic cell. All the membrane bound organelles are absent in the prokaryotes, and all the membrane bound organelles are present in the case of eukaryotes. Okay, so this is the difference between the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell. Now, moving forward, let us talk about the cytoplasm. Now, we know that cytoplasm is the arena of the cellular activity. Okay, it is a fluid like structure which is present inside the plasma membrane. All the cell organelles are actually embedded in the cytoplasm only. So, talking about the cytoplasm, it is a lightly stained area of the cell when viewed under the microscope. It is the fluid which is present inside the plasma membrane. All the cell organelles along with the nucleus are present in the cytoplasm only. They are embedded in the cytoplasm, and this cytoplasm can also be referred to as the site of all the cellular activities. All the activities of the cell, they take place in the cytoplasm only. Now let us talk about the cell organ. So cell organelles, as I told you, the meaning of organelles means little organs. They are present inside the cell. Now let us talk about some of the most important organelles such as mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, endoplasmic reticulum, plastids in the case of plants, and then lysosomes. Now we see what is the role of the cell organelle. See, each of the cell organelle, it is responsible for performing different functions. Okay, they all have their functions that they have to perform. Okay, any doubts up till now? Hmm?
No, mom.
Sure. Can I move forward now?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now let's talk about endoplasmic reticulum. Now, endoplasmic, let's break down the word to understand what is the meaning. So, endo means inside, plasmic means related to the plasma, and reticulum is net like structure. So, a net like structure which is present inside the plasma is the endoplasmic reticulum. It is a large network of membrane bound tubes and sheaths. Okay, it is a very big network and it is membrane bound. It can be long, it can be round, or it can be oblong, sort of like elongated in shape. And the structure of endoplasmic reticulum, it is almost similar to the plasma membrane. Now, the endoplasmic reticulum are of two types. The one that has like ribosomes present on it, those are known as rough endoplasmic reticulum. The ones that do not have the ribosomes present on them, they are the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Now, what is the function of ribosome and what does it signify? It signifies protein synthesis. So, the endoplasmic reticulum that has the ribosomes present, they can synthesize proteins. Now, talking about the function of smooth endoplasmic reticulum, so it is responsible for the manufacturing of fats and lipids. Like fats or lipids can be made by small smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Now, in general, what is the function of endoplasmic reticulum? The main function of the endoplasmic reticulum is the packaging and transportation. This is the function. Another thing that we must know about is membrane biogenesis. See, membrane biogenesis, it is like the formation of the cell membrane with the help of proteins and lipids. This phenomenon is known as membrane biogenesis. Now, let us look at the functions of endoplasmic reticulum in a nutshell. So, we have transportation of cellular materials between the cytoplasm and the nucleus. Then, it functions as the cytoplasmic framework and it provides the surface for biochemical activities. Also, the small endoplasmic reticulum also detoxifies the like poisons and drugs. In the case of vertebrates, detoxification happens because of the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, what happened? Why is any no one so responsive today? Hmm? Are you
Yes,
people
ma'am,
tired?
understood.
Have you had a lot of classes today? Hmm? Or were you expecting chemistry class and you got biology class instead, so you are sad?
No,
No,
ma'am.
I'm not like that.
Sure?
Yes,
Is it
mom.
me?
No, mom.
All right. Now let us move on to the second organelle, that is the Golgi apparatus. Now see, Camillo Golgi, he was the person who actually described the Golgi apparatus. That is why this organelle is named after him only. Now, Golgi apparatus is also a membrane bound organelle. Talking about the function of Golgi apparatus. So see, the Golgi apparatus is responsible for the packaging and dispatching the products that are synthesized by the endoplasmic reticulum. So where? So wherever it is actually needed, the targeted site. Okay. Now the storage, modification, and packaging. All these like are the functions of Golgi. Apart from that, they are also responsible for the formation of simple sugars from the complex sugars. They also make the lysosomes. So these are the various functions of the Golgi apparatus. Now, talking about the mitochondria. Now, everyone knows that mitochondria is known as the powerhouse of the cell. Why? Because it synthesizes the ATP. What is ATP? So, the ATP stands for the adenosine triphosphate. It is the energy currency of the cell. Okay. And always remember that it has a double membrane structure. It has two membranes, outer membrane and inner membrane. Now, shape of the mitochondria is usually rod shape. Okay, it is a rod shaped structure, and the outer membrane is sort of porous in nature. The inner membrane has many foldings. Okay, and these foldings are responsible to increase the surface area for the ATP production. It increases the surface area. Now, talking about the outer membrane, it is porous in nature. Pores are present, and this is for the process of diffusion. Now, all the energy which is needed in the body, it is provided by the mitochondria because the mitochondria has like it makes the ATP molecule. The mitochondria has its own DNA and ribosomes. Okay, it has its own DNA, like how the cell has its own DNA. Same way, the organelle contains its own DNA and ribosomes. Now, always remember that the mitochondria and chloroplast, they are known as semi autonomous organelles. Why? It is because they contain their own DNA, they contain their own ribosomes. Alright, now moving forward, let us talk about the plastids. Now, the plastids are double membrane yet again. All the plants and algae, they contain plastids. The plastids are not there in humans or animals. There are two types of plastids. One is chromoplast, one is leucoplast. Now, the chromoplast, they are colored plastids, okay, and the leucoplast are colorless plastids. They are white, colorless. Now, the chromoplasts which contain the green color pigment that is known as chlorophyll, they are known as the chloroplast. This chlorophyll, as we all know, it is very important for the process of photosynthesis. Now, another thing to remember here is that in the chloroplast, other than the chlorophyll, there are many other pigments also present, such as certain orange pigments are there, yellow pigments are there. All of these pigments are also present in the chlorophyll. Talking about the leucoplast, so the functions of the leucoplast, it is storage of materials such as the starch, the oil, also storage of protein granules. It stores protein as well. Now, inside the chloroplast, there is a space which is known as stroma. It is the structure in which many membrane layers are embedded. Just like how I told you, the chloroplast as well as the mitochondria, they are also known as semi-autonomous because they contain their own DNA and ribosomes. They have their own machinery. That is why. Now coming on to the next type of organelle, that is vacuole. Now vacuoles, they are sac-like structures that store the liquid or solid part of the cell. Now, in the case of animals, vacuoles are very small and very less. But in case of plants, 50 to 90% of the cell volume is occupied by the vacuoles only. And another thing to remember, this is the most important thing, is that the membrane of the vacuole is known as a tonoplast. It is a single membrane and the membrane is called as tonoplast. Now, up till now, we have discussed everything about the cell organelle. Now, moving forward, let us discuss about the cell division. Now, what is cell division? It is the process in which new cells are made by division from the old cells. What is the need? See, sometimes our cell become old, some cells die. So, to replace those old and dead cells, the cell division is required. Apart from that, the gamete formation, which is involved in the reproduction process, for that also cell division is required. So there are two types of cell division, mitosis and meiosis. Mitosis is known as the equational division. Here what happens is that the mother cell divides to form two identical daughter cells. So from one cell, two daughter cells are made, and these daughter cells, they have the exact same number of chromosome as the mother cell. For example, if the mother cell is 2n, the daughter cells will also be 2n each. Now, mitosis is known as equational division. Why? Because the daughter cells have the same number of chromosome as compared to the mother cell. Now let us see what are the functions of mitosis. So mitosis or the equational division, it helps in the growth. It helps in repairing of tissues also. Talking about the meiosis, this is the other type of division. It is known as reductional division. Also, here after meiosis, gametes are formed. Okay, it forms the gametes. A mother cell will divide by meiosis to form four daughter cells. Okay, now if the mother cell is 2n in nature, the daughter cells will each be n. So here the number of chromosome in the daughter cell is half the number of chromosome in the mother cell. So because of this reason, meiosis is known as reductional division. Now meiosis takes place in two steps, meiosis 1, meiosis 2. Each of these has certain more events that occur in between, but that is it. So with this, the cell chapter has been concluded. Now tell me if anyone has any doubts, any questions.
Ma'am, can you repeat vacuoles?
Sure. Vacuoles, see, imagine vacuoles as big sacs that store liquid or solid constituents of the cell. Vacuoles in the case of animals is very small in size if present, mostly it is absent. But in the cases of plant, the vacuoles are very large and so large that they would occupy 50 to 90% of the volume. For example, if this is a plant cell, so vacuole will be present like this, sort of like this, and then the other cell organelles and everything there. So it occupies maximum volume of the plant cell. Now, one more thing, it stores the solid and liquid constants, and the most important part over here that they usually ask question from is that what is the name of the membrane of the vacuole? So it is tonoplast, tonoplast, tonoplast. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So this chapter is basically like over. Now tell me, any more doubts?
No.
Cell division is clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All right, very good. Now in the next class, I'm thinking we'll revise another chapter, that is tissues, right? And if you have any doubts in this particular chapter or anywhere else in any chapter, you can come with your doubts, okay?
Mom,